This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 342 for Wednesday, December 11th, 2019. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff that we are into. Joining me, as always, as he does on the second week of the month, Mr. Lou Page from Zombies 8, my podcast, and you can find him at Busy Zombie Lord on all the social media that matters. Welcome, sir. What is new with you?
I found out I'm going to be a dad.
Well, that changes things entirely.
Yeah.
You and I have obviously been speaking off mic, but congratulations, sir. That is fantastic.
Oh, thank you very much.
You are. I'm now the odd one out. all of the male podcast co-hosts that I have had on this show, like regular co-hosts in the past, are now fathers.
Right now, Erica is at 8 weeks. We found out just before Thanksgiving. And when I told my father was like, "Oh, you are gonna have kids," and I was like, "Yeah, why didn't you think I was?" He was like, "Well, you're almost 40," and I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Well, your mother and I had you at like 22," and I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Well, it's a little later in life," and I was like, "So?" And he's like, "I just didn't think you wanted any at this point." I said, "Dad, we've been struggling to get by." I said, I didn't want to do this while we were living in a studio apartment.
Yeah. I feel like there's if you can, I feel like there's a number of check boxes you kind of want to tick before you get into raising a family. I find it funny that there are those assumptions. I mean, I never assume anything about anybody, but the most of my friends that are having kids these days are certainly in their 30s when it happens. That's normally when I see people, starting families and stuff like that. It's never in their 20s these days. I say never. I mean, of course, people prove me wrong all the time, but I mean, it's a blanket statement. But it's normally people in their 30s. Peyton and Lee were in their mid to late 30s actually when they had you, and so but I find it an interesting anecdote too is that none of the people that I've talked to on podcasts, granted the podcasts are not about parenting, but they never bring up kids until there's either one on the way or one has arrived. Like it's not something that comes up all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas other guests that I've had on the show that are parents, they'll chime in and the dad thing will come in, but it's only because like these are shows, like for example, last week with Steven, his boys are like 13 and 15. So like they watched The Dragon Prince together as a family. They all loved it. Right. And so he brings that kind of like that input to the table. And every once in a while I talk to Chad and he'll talk about like, how his daughter's into Lego and Star Wars stuff and like that. So I get like little geeky anecdotes that way. But previous to that, it's not like I had long conversations with Chad and Peyton about children.
Until you have them, there's no point in really talking about them. I mean, Erica and I have always said we wanted them, but it's always been, but we're living in a crappy apartment and you just lost your job. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll have to work on that. And then we'd get a little bit further along and then there'd be a setback. When we get a little bit further along and then there'd be a setback. And we've been like, when the time comes, the time comes. Mm-hmm. And then we now have the house and, we're reasonably responsible adults and both have decently paying jobs. And we're like, okay, I guess now it's okay to not take the risk.
Yeah, I think that's where I would land too. And it's always been not a difficult thing for me to imagine. I'm single, so that just pulls it out of any kind of forethought. But in situations where I have been in relationships immediately, and I don't know whether it's that I'm a provider at heart or whether It's just the social norms that you just accept or that you feel are what is expected of you in society, where I would think about like, oh yeah, okay, this could be a long-term thing, maybe I want to see a kid in the future, but my brain would immediately be like, whoa, you really maybe want to sort your business and life out first before you're thinking about adding another one to the mix, sort of thing. It's always about like that stability, and it's
Yep.
difficult as a freelancer. I've never had that stability. I've gotten used to the instability, which I don't know if that's a good thing, but
That's not a good thing.
but because it no longer surprises me. I mean, any number of things can happen in the run of my freelance career, and I just sort of either grin and bear it or celebrate or, dive into the work and do it or whatever. But none of the screwballs that life and business throw at me really set me back anymore. So it's like, oh yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me at all. So bad news
Yeah.
is never like, oh my God, the world is ending. It's just like, again, like it's not,
Yep.
it's, now I say all this not to complain, because the last year or so has been miles above a couple of years ago. So, and I've got a lot of different plates spinning creatively and making a lot of new contacts and doing a lot of new things. So I'm not complaining at all. But it's one of those things that in the past, during those, when you're at these moments of even keel, you can look back and realize, wow, last year or 18 months ago was a real shit show. And I just kind of put my head
Mm-hmm.
down and went through it and just kind of like, well, no one's going to care if I keep on complaining, and you got to kind of put on a smile and keep going. Um, but like to look back, I'm going, man, like it's a tough thing when that stability isn't there. So I've often thought, like magically or from a like a pie in the sky situation, sure, I could be a dad. Like it's the kind of thing
Yep.
where I'm into. I feel like I'm into the kind of things that would be, what's the word? Not relatable,
Acceptable.
acceptable. I feel like I've got a good balance in that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I have, and I've mentioned this before in the show, I think, but I have a really good relationship with both of my parents, all four of them actually, because of course everybody's remarried or repartnered or whatever. And so my sister and I both have really good relationships with our parents compared to some of my, other friends. When you hear
Oh.
stuff and you're just like, wow, okay, so I'm not taking I mean, granted, my parents got divorced when I was 16, so like there's a lot of shifting that happened on the way up, but uh, everything landed in a good place. Like it's and I don't take that for granted.
Yeah.
So
You're in a very different place than both my wife and I.
right, yeah,
So
yeah,
the two of us, my dad lives 1,500 miles. Both my dads live 1,500 miles away, and my father-in-law lives like 4 states away, and uh, er, I don't have any grandparents at this point,
right,
and and uh, my wife's grandparents travel all the time. So I'm like we don't have a whole lot of like anybody that can help us. My wife's I have four brother-in-laws, but they all live all like hours and hours and hours. So one
right,
lives on the other side. So there's
yeah.
like nobody to help us. It's literally gonna just be
Just
us.
the two of you, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, still, I mean, super happy days. Like that's
Oh
phenomenal.
yeah.
And so 8 weeks. So you're looking at like a late spring, early summer, maybe.
The math estimate is it will be July or August.
Oh, okay. So late summer.
Yeah.
Nice. Very, very cool.
Which will be funny because Erica's birthday's in August as well. So if it's an August baby, it could be closer to her birthday.
Oh, wow. My sister's birthday is in July. Actually, both her and her husband have birthdays in July. They're just a couple days apart. So
I have a cousin, and he and his mother were both born on April 1st.
nice.
That's quite the April Fool's joke.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That would
Yeah.
that they are probably sick of that joke, I would
Yes,
imagine.
they are. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And my birthday was close enough to theirs that growing up, we just celebrate everybody's birthday all on the same day.
Nice. Very, very cool. So, out of curiosity, did you pick up anything cool or interesting or fun or on the Steam sale over the Black
I
Friday, Cyber Monday? Like anything
I did. I snagged about a dozen games. I won't lie.
to add to the 1,500? Nice.
Yeah, but between that and then uh Humble has changed their monthly bundle thing,
Oh,
and I made sure I subscribed to that, and so that gave me like 9 more, 10 more games on top of like the 4 or 5 I bought on Steam right away. So
nice.
I've had a pile of games, but the one that it's been on my wish list. Only came out a couple of months ago. There's a game called Disco Elysium, and it it's $40, which is more than I like to try and pay for my games. I try to pay less, and since it has just come out, they knocked it 25% off for the Black Friday sale. And I went, you know what? It's probably never going to be cheaper than $30 for at least another year, and I'd really like to play this now. So I forked out the $30 and I got it pretty much brand new. Like it's not that old. And it sucked me in for my entire Thanksgiving vacation.
So obviously $30 well spent.
Yeah. And I immediately fought the urge to go back through and play the game again because it does have some replayability. Um, it is a heavy dialogue and player choice driven game. It takes place in this weird steampunk world that you don't, when you start the game, you don't realize it's a weird steampunk world. It looks like modern day and you're a police detective. It's not until the first car is seen on the road that you go, something weird going on here.
Huh.
And then they start talking about different countries, and you realize they're not talking about modern countries, they're talking about these fictitious countries, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna have to really pay attention to the dialogue here so that I know what the hell's going on. And the premise is you play a detective who wakes up in his hotel room and it's trashed. He had a drinking and drug binge, and wakes up blacked out. He doesn't remember his name, even that he's a police officer or what's going on. And so immediately your character wakes up and you're trying to piece together what you did, and you're trying to figure out if the room you're in, you trashed it, or if someone beat you up. Uh, and your character talks when you create your character in the beginning of the game, there's 4 stats. There's intelligence, psychological, physical, and then like charisma. And based on those choices, uh change the way your character can, there's, each stat has 5 skills based in it. And the intelligence one is like common sense. uh my favorite ability in the game is you have the ability to visual calculus. So when he arrives in a crime scene, he can tell bullet trajectory and lay out crime scene tape and put the things on the wall and do his own detective and like crime scene and analyzation as the game goes on. And I happen to just take high intelligence. So every time I walked into a crime scene, it was like he's dropping things on the floor and laying out numbers to analyze foot patterns. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. But you also have conversations with these psychological profiles. Like your body will yell at you, and you will have like arguments with yourself, and you have a partner and he's like, why are you talking to yourself? And you're like, shut up. And then like you go on these diatribes about the government and the conspiracies that the world's going to blow up, and you're like, what's going on? This game it's so weird. But all of that is based on the way you outline your character, and talking to people gives you experience points. Achieving certain goals by talking to somebody and convincing them to do something that maybe isn't in their best interest, but it's in your best interest, earns you experience points, and then you can buff stats and buff other skills and make it so that you can do certain things. And eventually you learn your name when you find your badge, like 3 days into your investigation. And it's both weird and trippy, and I had such a good time with it that I was like, I want to play this again. But I don't want to wait. I know that if I play it 1 or 2 more times, I'll probably be done with it. So I'm like, no. I'll come back to it in like a year or two. Like
Right.
I got to take a break.
Yeah, like if you're influencing characters. I watched the trailer before the show, and I'd seen it before somewhere, probably on like a Instagram ad or something. If it was just released, they probably had some marketing and stuff going on.
Oh yeah.
Released October 9th, 2019. And
Yeah.
I liked the combination of the artwork where even though it's CG, like 3D graphics and stuff from a video game, when you're talking to a character, they put like a concept art painting of the character up on like the
Yeah.
right hand side or left hand side, depending.
Yeah.
And it just felt very artistic. I mean, weird. I certainly got that from it as well. The trailer was very strange. It was very monotonous, very monotone. Like it was not. There was no excitement. It was just like, this is the biggest RPG world ever. You will have all the choices in the world, and it's just like you don't sound like that's a good thing. But it took you. It takes a minute to realize that where everything said in the trailer is said in the exact same way. It gives no priority to one thing or the other. I think the
Yeah.
idea being that they want you to kind of make your own fun.
And it is definitely a game where I will tell you this: the world you're in, like it takes place in one city, and the city isn't that big, but I literally it took me like 40 hours to finish the game, and I still was like, there's things I missed. And like when I finished the game, you have a notebook with like notes of how many quests you still have active when you finish the game.
Right.
But I finished the main plot, and I still had like 6 or 7 plot lines that were still going, and I was like, well, I can finish those next time.
Nice. Yeah. That's kind of like where I am with No Man's Sky. You said you paid $30 for this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I paid $30 for No Man's Sky. It was on sale for 50% off back in August.
Yeah.
Bought it knowing that I would eventually be able to play it. I've probably sunk about 40 hours into it by now, I'd say. Um,
Yeah.
and the only reason I know that is because it tells you when you log in how many hours you've been in game, which is kind of a scary thing. But in an open world game like that, like I've barely scratched the surface really. But I find that there's something balancing about like something costing $30 to $40 and then putting 30 to 40 hours into it as a game and not really having realized it. Like you've just been playing it because you've been enjoying it. You're not trying to get like some sort of best economic value out of it. And I think that that's where I start to say like, well, okay, that was worth the, even if something happens and I don't play No Man's Sky at all, for the next couple of months, I don't feel like I've wasted that $30. Like I think I've got my $30 of enjoyment out of it
Yeah.
already, knowing full well that's not the case and that I will continue to play. Very similar to you, like you're going to return to this game. It's going to be on your favorites list and you're probably going to check it out again, in a what probably later on next summer when you're going to be spending a lot of time at home.
Yes, exactly. And I will say this, should anybody be interested in this game, I will tell you this, I'm not going to spoil the plot, but the basic idea is when your character finally does realize he's a cop and why he's in town is there was a murder. Somebody was murdered and hung in basically the backyard behind the hotel you're staying in. And it's believed to be politically motivated. You're in like a strange small city state country that was like the government was overthrown by the people, and then an invading army came in to clean up the mess, and they kicked out the people's government, and so there's a lot of turmoil. Like nobody trusts anybody, and you're cops from a different district in a different country that have been sent there because there is no police. And because this is politically motivated, the crime needs to be solved and figured out if it's who did it, because it may be politically motivated and someone may be trying to once again overthrow the current government. And at all turns, your character can become a fascist, or you can become a hippie, or you can become a communist, or you can just say, I'm not playing your politics game. And like every choice you make changes how characters treat you and how they talk to you. And I was like, I'm not playing your politics game. And some of the characters are like, oh, thank God. And then some of the characters are like, then you're the enemy. And they won't give you like things you need to
Right.
solve the case, and you've got to figure out other ways. It's very it's very weird and
I
trippy, and
wonder what a development backstory, like I wonder what the development of this game looks like in terms of story and dialogue trees. Like it must be an
it's
absolute
insane.
web.
There
Like
is
it must be
absolutely
bananas.
there is no action in this game whatsoever. It is all dialogue and all talking to people and all solving puzzles. And by puzzles, I don't mean like they're heavy puzzles. It's more like, oh, there's a frozen shut freezer chest. I bet I need a crowbar to open it. And then like halfway through the story, you find a crowbar, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go back to that basement where I found that frozen shut freezer chest and pry open the freezer chest with my new crowbar. And
Hmm.
bam, there you go. And like there's stuff like that.
So, uh, is it all voice acted or is it mostly written?
Major anything that involves the major plot tends to be voice acted. The rest of it you've got to read.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, because it's an indie game, right? Like it's not a
Yeah, it's very indie.
yeah. Well, I mean, it looks cool. I mean, if you're into the dialogue stuff, then it sounds like it's an interesting take on all of
It,
it.
it was my favorite thing in video games is talking to people and the story and meeting interesting characters and stuff like that. That's my favorite part about video games. And this was like everything I like about video games with none of the like bad stuff. Like, oh great, I have to like be dexterous and try and jump over the thing. And
Mm.
nope. This is all me wandering around talking to people and solving puzzles. I'm like, that's it. I'm good.
There's a certain amount of that in No Man's Sky, but the problem that I have with it is like while the rewards are cool, and also there's a lot of RNG in it,
Yeah.
but you have to get through the first like two clicks of dialogue first. And the first one is generally either a bunch of gobbledygook in a language that you don't understand, which gets deciphered over time because you're learning new words. So there's this alien race called the Gek. They look like kind of like turtle pigeon aliens, and
Yeah.
and so you don't know any words in Gek at first, so it's all crap. And then you learn like 40 words, and then you start seeing words like friend and trade and ship and things in the dialogue, and it's like, okay, well, then it gets a little bit more interesting. But ultimately, the next sentence is always the same thing, just worded differently. It's just
Yeah.
like this being clicks its beak and farts and flower smells and is excited to see you and pulls out a data pad, and it's all just said in like a different sentence, so you still feel the need to read it because it doesn't visually say, oh, that's the same thing they've said before. But then you realize, you get to the end of it and you're like, oh, it's the exact same notion gesture thing. And I really wish that they would just kind of put that all up and on the screen at the same time, or I would much appreciate it if I could click through the stuff that gets repetitive. But I can also appreciate that when I was streaming it, when I was first playing, that taking my time and reading those sentences uh, was was helpful. And there are other times when you're not doing the same sort of like mindless meeting people and learning new words at like a trading station, where you'll meet someone and the dialogue tree will be just a little bit different, and there'll be four choices, like I need to learn the word for trade or engineering, or I need to learn a phrase or a word in like spirituality or something like that. And then you think, okay, well, this character was talking about spirituality. I should ask them about the spirituality word. And you tend to learn like a better word as opposed to like the or ship or bus.
Yeah.
You tend to learn, the word for like history or whatever that happens to be. And in other cases too, there are actual rewards. There's not a dialogue tree where you're learning the word. It's just your choices are, you know, accept the person's gesture or pay the person 100 units, which is nothing. It's like pocket change, to to appease their bad day or whatever it happens to be. And you kind of have to gauge off the previous sentence. And they're usually pretty well written where you're like, I'm not really sure if this is the right way, but I'm like 70% on yes, I'll give them the money. And sometimes it backfires, and sometimes it's just like this person is offended by your gesture of gratitude, you moron, and then they storm off and don't give you anything. Or in the the reverse is that you get things done, and sometimes it's just a little bit of like reward, like nanites or units or something. It's like
Yeah.
you look down on your luck and they give you like $1,000, or which is nothing in the game, but or it's something else entirely where like there's this warrior race. They're very, very similar to Klingons. They don't look like them, but they act like them. And I did something where it was like, I instead of offering to like salve this person's wounds and heal them, I just kind of like clapped them on the shoulder and said like, "Buck up, you fought well," as opposed to helping them.
Mhm.
And that was the best response because they were like, "Yes," like you like
Yeah.
the alien looks at you with a gesture of understanding and pride, and then bleeds on the floor, like stuff like that. But they don't show it because they don't get into that. They just kind of leave a little bit to their imagination. But then he like gave me some sort of like relic or totem or something, and it was like, or your reputation with that race goes up by like 1 or 2 points. You're like, oh, okay, that's much better than just learning a word. So if you get it
Right.
right, then there can be some rewards. I don't necessarily know if I'd want to play a whole game like that, and that's just me. Um, because in between these conversations, I get to fly a spaceship and shoot at stuff.
Yeah, I will say this. Anybody that's interested in Disco Elysium, my recommendation is I took a low on my physical skill because I planned on being smart and not getting into fistfights and stuff. And uh, my suggestion is when you get your first few levels up, make sure you put skill points into what's called endurance. Because immediately when you go outside and you have to investigate the body, if you don't have high enough endurance, he throws up and won't go near the body. And you have to wait 8 hours of in-game time for him to go back and try again.
That's so good. Like
And so
very well thought out.
everything is done by dice rolls. So if your skill's high enough, your dice roll doesn't matter. You're gonna always have enough points to do the thing.
Right.
And looking at the body is like a challenging roll. And like I was so low in endurance the first few times, the game literally popped up and said, "Yeah, you're never going to be able to do this. Go to the store and buy this item and then drink it. And yes, you're going to be in a drug binge for the next 8 hours, but you need that to survive the endurance check." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And it was like 3 days into the game that I finally got the body down out of the tree. And literally this dialogue, because it was 3 days in, where people are like, "Are you ever going to take the body out of the tree?"
That's it's like I said, it's obviously very well thought out, and I mean, mysteries and stuff like that would be really cool. I can't say that I would never because I've not played one, so I don't know it to like I've not tried one to say that I like it or dislike it. But I like that because it's got that kind of a pace to it. They've obviously taken the time and put the art into it. Like it's a visually very pretty game. It looks really nice.
And it's got a good sense of humor. Like most of the game is fairly full of humor, but it's kind of a dark sense of humor where like one of the skills your body has is like electrochemistry. And so whenever you're near somebody that's dealing drugs or somebody that's drinking, the science behind the chemical that they're on or whatever. And sometimes your electrochemistry will pop into your head and be like, you want some of their drugs. And you're like, no, no, I don't. And when you turn it down, it goes, "You'll regret this." And you're like, no, no, I won't. It is like this dark sense of humor to it that I really appreciated.
Nice. Very, very cool. Well, for me this week, I have been back to an old friend. We'll say I noticed that Netflix added The Blacklist season 5, which I know is not the current season. I think the current season is 7, but
Yeah.
Netflix in Canada is slow. And
It's not slow. We only just got the same seasons here in
oh,
America too.
really? Interesting. I must have had a deal for another network or something. But anyway, I stopped watching not out of any kind of I didn't like the show. I finished season 4, and it was a pretty solid ending. I think the fourth season had a really big kind of reveal and kind of wrap up to it. But then I was, the devices that I was left to get season 5 was like, it's too many hoops to jump through. I don't like the show that much. Um,
Yeah.
and so I was just like, well, I'm eventually it'll come back on Netflix because that's how I watched. I think I watched seasons 1 through 3 on Netflix, and then 4 I had to scrounge for. So now that 5 and 6 are on Netflix, I have the blissful, I guess, reprise in the evenings of not having to wonder what to watch next. I can just play the next episode. And honestly, I sometimes don't even get through a whole episode. Sometimes I get about halfway done and I'm finished dinner and I've got other stuff I have to do. So I'll just pause it and let it, I'll finish up the next day.
Yeah.
And it's not the best show. Like, it's not like I'm here to recommend it.
I think the first few seasons were really good. And the longer it goes, kind of the weaker it's getting. And
Yep.
I'm hoping they're going to wrap it up in the next season.
Yeah, there does not seem to be an end in sight, as far as I can tell from some brief
Yeah.
internet research. It seems like one of those shows where the cast and crew are probably really enjoying themselves and having a good time making it, and it's making money for the network, so they're probably just going to keep on continuing as long as they can. It's just too bad because I I still really enjoy the dynamic between Keane and Reddington. So that's Megan Boone and James Spader. James Spader's a really fun actor to watch. He's a charismatic
He's the
dude.
only reason to watch that show.
Yeah.
I I I, I enjoy it. I like it. But his character is the main reason I watch the show.
I really like. Is it Kembe? Is his bodyguard
Yes.
friend? I
Yeah.
really like their relationship too.
Yep.
He's very silent, but when he does say something, it's pretty poignant. Uh,
Yeah.
and I like some of Reddington's seedier, more eclectic uh, compatriots. Some of the criminals
Yes.
that he deals with are weird, but in a weird,
Yeah.
wonderful sort of way, because they're
Uh,
they're highly intelligent, so they're that kind of weird.
yeah. I liked it when Pee Wee Herman shows up for a while as
Yeah,
one of his. Yeah. And then, yeah,
yeah.
no spoilers,
I
but
like
yeah.
I like I do like the dude at the DMV. I find him very funny.
Yeah.
It's not like a laugh out loud funny. It's kind of like an eye roll funny, but it's dry enough that I don't mind it. Um,
And yeah, and every time he interacts with him, you're waiting for like some weird dialogue between them that you're like, what is going on? There's there's something here. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're always talking about something that like happened or didn't happen or like, and you're like, what?
and I have to say that there's been a couple of times already this season where I thought, "Oh wow, that was a twist I didn't expect. I wonder how they're going to get into this one." And then it's revealed that it's all a plan by Reddington, and that the thing that just happened was actually people that he hired. And you're just like, "Oh my god!" Like they totally got me with how they filmed that, and they
Yeah.
they only revealed just enough that you think you know how things are going to go, and then they throw a monkey wrench in. But what you don't always realize is that Reddington is quite often responsible for the monkey wrench. And
I have a question for you
mhm.
because I'm either finished season 5 or season 6. I don't know which one we finished. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen season 6. But are you in the season with the bald guy that's trying to stop Reddington?
No, I'm in the season with the suitcase. The suitcase that
Okay.
someone left. And
Okay.
so I mean it's not I don't want to get into who gave it to whoever, because if people are behind on the show then that reveals the end of season 4. And season 4
Yeah.
was so good that even now I know it's 3 years ago, but I don't want to ruin it for anybody.
Yeah.
But so the season starts with uh Elizabeth's husband or partner. I can't even remember what he is. Uh,
He was her husband, but
yeah.
under a different name. Yeah.
So he's trying to sort out the contents of this suitcase, and Reddington is trying to get the suitcase, but neither one of them know that the other is hunting for it or dealing with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of that. So there's also a couple of other side plots, and that's where I start to get like eye rolly. Okay, come on. I don't care about this side person or this side plot. Like, just let's get back to the main who done it this week, because I this is all going to go precisely as I anticipate it's going to go, because it's with characters that you either don't like or don't care about.
Yeah.
With and doing things that just don't make any sense. I don't remember his name. It's Claire's partner, the male FBI agent. I don't remember his name.
I started out liking him, and then like towards this season, I was kind of like, dude, they just need to kill this guy off.
Yeah, it's not the actor at all. It's the writing for him. It's the writing for the character.
Yep.
It's that
Ev,
unfortunate thing
Ev,
of Keane and Reddington steal the show and get all the major plot points, and they're the most exciting to watch.
I don't mind the tech guy. I
Yeah,
actually enjoy his character, and his plot lines are usually pretty simple. And you're like, oh yeah, there's a side plot with him. It's not really going to go anywhere that's going to be too
because
taxing.
because this is the thing. He's surprised. His plot lines are social. They're
Yeah,
light. They don't have a huge impact necessarily on the outcome of the main drive of the episode, which is to catch the bad guy.
yeah.
And it's like the thing with the other agent. I should open IMDb. I'm feeling bad that I'm not remembering these names. Um, with these other agents, like it's another life or death plot, and then it's weird that I don't care about it. Um, Wrestler is the
Ev,
guy that I'm talking about,
yeah,
Donald
yeah.
Wrestler, and you're talking about Samarna Vabi is the female that's with them. It's not Tom Keane.
Aram.
Aram, that's his name. Yeah, Aram's really fun. He's the nerdy dude. He's the dude in the chair. every
Yeah,
every 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 superhero show needs it, and yeah, I know it's not superheroes, but like every kind of formulaic show has the smart dude in the chair. Uh, but he's one of the things that keeps the snappy dialogue going. Like he's one of
yeah,
the guys that keeps the FBI base kind of rolling forward with all the information, and we know how to find this person because we tapped this phone or found this thing or whatever. And so he brings a lot of the detective work to the show, which I like. But yeah, the wrestler plot, don't care. I really enjoy, like I said, Reddington and Keane, and there's a development in their relationship in season 4 that is the whole crux of that season, and it does change their dynamic in season 5, and I think for the better. It makes Keen a more complicated character, and she's a phenomenal actor, and so there's a lot of things that she's going through in season 5 that are not external, they're internal, and so it's affecting how she's doing her job and the decisions that she's making and how she reacts to certain situations, and it becomes less of a she's less of a straight man, in terms of the
yeah.
Reddington being the bubbly, off the wall, kind of like charismatic villain.
She ends up with her own set of like bad guys helping her that you're like, oh,
Yeah,
she's not as clean cut as she was in that first season.
yeah. There's a lot of gray with her, which I like. The clean cut is left to Aram, which is fine. It's all good. There's just like I said, there's the thing that I think the show suffers from, which is no fault of its own, is that it's a network TV show and they have to wrap everything up in 43 minutes.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
I much prefer the season enders where there's a two-parter because they can have time to flex the plot a little. I would love to have seen this kind of show in a Netflix situation where it was an original series where they just go at it with less episodes, but uh, a season long plot, which would
Yeah.
they do sort of do a season long plot, but the problem with the season long plot is that it's TV formulaic. Like the suitcase is this big thing, and you literally get 5 minutes of it every episode.
Yep. Yep. And then they'll do one episode that focuses on the suitcase like midway through the season, and then
Christmas,
you
yeah.
won't get a yeah.
Christmas season finale, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
speaking of, I haven't watched them yet, but I was talking to Alistair just a little bit before the show, and he was saying how much he is enjoying the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover with the CW shows. And I don't think that the shows are that complicated that I'm not going to be able to watch those and get caught up, like just, in terms of just watching the crossovers for the fun of it. And I don't really care what the other plots of the other shows are because I could probably predict them. Um,
Yep.
but he was just saying like it's not rocket science, but there are some really fun, rewarding fan CW moments in this crossover, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna look it up afterwards.
I heard of one that happened, I guess, in last night's episode that I was like, oh, wow, they introduced a character from this other thing that's on another network that was on this other thing that, like, is a DC property and somehow got the actor from that show to guest for
Nice.
like 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, wow, that's that's kind of awesome that they managed to do that.
They've ran out a big list of celebrities and stuff that are from previous shows and previous iterations that are coming back for cameos and stuff. And so I'm looking forward to that. I've not watched the trailer. I've seen that there are trailers out for it, but I've been avoiding them on purpose because I figured like, well, whatever. I used to watch some of these shows 10, 15 years ago. So I'll check it out and see, from my own perspective, just kind of see those reveals for the fun of the reveals. Because
I
really the plot is not going to be what I want to watch the show for.
No, no.
But
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think Erica and I are probably going to watch when it's over. Is we'll find a way to watch the crossover event because that it just seems like it's going to be fun.
yeah, I'm looking forward to Star Wars as well. Actually, I've not mentioned this on the show, I don't think, but I've got tickets to go see the Rise of Skywalker on the 22nd. My dad and his girlfriend and my sister and I all go every Christmas whenever there is a Star Wars film out. So this year we're all going together to go see the Rise of Skywalker, and I'm starting to get excited about that. I won't get into any details because I know that a good chunk of the audience does not have even access to Disney Plus. But I've very much been enjoying The Mandalorian, and it's doing its job. It's getting me excited for Star Wars, and I've been so busy lately that I've almost forgot that we're only a couple of weeks away from the Star Wars release. I think part of me, it's one of those things where like I haven't even seen the final trailer for Rise of Skywalker. I've only watched the first trailer, and then I've just decided I'm just going to avoid the trailer and I'm going to go see it like 2 days after it's out. So it should be pretty straightforward. But the thing that I'm um, surprised about is that I'm not like champing at the bit. Like I'm not on the
No,
edge of my seat. And I think it's because of Last Jedi.
yeah, I will say this. I think I've said it on the show before. I wasn't a huge fan of Last Jedi. So going into this one, I'm kind of like, I don't know. Like I only just recently saw the most current trailer for Rise of Skywalker, and that was only because I went to the movies and they ran it before the movie I went to go
Yeah.
see.
If I see it in the theaters, I'll obviously just enjoy it, but I'm gonna not watch it online or anything.
The movie I went to go see that I saw the trailer for Rise of Skywalker from is I went to go see Knives Out,
Nice.
which is by Ryan Johnson, who made Last Jedi.
Oh.
And my friends and I went to go see it because we liked the trailer and we liked all the actors into it. And my friend Darren leaned over at me and he goes, God, I hope this isn't like Last Jedi.
The reviews are really good.
It had a 98, I think, on Rotten Tomatoes, which is like usually really high. And I will say this, it was the most, and the movie is over 2 hours long and it didn't feel like it.
Really?
Like when it was over, I was like, it's over? Holy crap. It was the fastest 2 hours I've ever had in a murder mystery.
I
It
find it
is,
hard with those films because with a star-studded cast like that, it's like Murder on the Orient Express. It's like when it's all really super well-known actors, I kind of find it hard to melt into the movie, and it's like, well, I'm just sitting here watching Johnny Depp and Dame Judi Dench and whoever
it,
these other people are just talk to one another.
okay. Okay. So the thing I will say is, uh, what's his name that plays Bond? Uh,
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig literally steals the whole movie. He talks with a Southern Kentucky accent the whole movie, and he's supposed to be like this famous private detective that's trying to solve this murder mystery. And every time he's on set, in scene, he just steals the entire presence away from everybody on camera.
Nice.
And you're like, I just want him to talk more. Just, just talk more. I don't care what you have to say. And he always has these crazy witty dialogue things that he has to say, or some weird Southern, like backwards saying thing, and you're like, I just want more of him. Just give me more of him. And the movie doesn't focus on all the famous people. They're really the side plot. The plot really focuses around the character you're supposed to relate to, which is the maid that finds the body of the idea is Christopher Plummer is a murder mystery writer who's so famous he owns his own publishing company that his son runs, and then he's used his wealth to make the rest of his kids rich. And he's kind of like a really great guy, donates to charity, does all these great things, and all his kids are really crappy people.
Mhm.
And when he dies, it looks like suicide, but somebody sent a letter with money to um Daniel Craig's character and said it's not suicide, it's a murder. And so he's there to figure out if it's suicide or a murder. And nobody likes him, nobody trusts him, and there's twists and turns, and every time you think you know what's going to happen, uh like a big twist is revealed that you go, "Oh, wait, so that's not the bad guy. Then who's the bad guy?" And then something else happens and you go, "Well, then if they're not the bad guy, then who's the bad guy?" And just
The reviews are often stating things like, edge of your seat to the very end. Like you think you
uh,
know, and then you don't know, and you think you know again, and then nope, you don't know, and it's
if murder, I will say this, if murder mysteries are not your thing, you'll be on your edge of your seat till the end. Uh the last third of the movie, while really fun, there's a point where somebody gets killed, and I leaned over, looked at my wife, and said, "This is what just happened." And she leaned over at me and she goes, "Are you sure?" And I said, "The next 30 minutes are going to go like this." And she went, "Okay." And then the next 30 minutes went exactly how I said they were going to go. And we stood up, and my friend Darren looked over at me and he went, "You figured it out way before the rest of us, didn't you?" And I went, "Uh-huh."
yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Is it just because it follows like murder mystery formula, or is it just you picked up on something that was just really subtle?
I picked up on, there's a line of dialogue
Okay.
in the beginning of the movie that once it's said, if you remember it later on in the movie, they kind of call back to something that's said earlier in the movie.
Oh, okay.
And I went, "Oh." And everybody else that I was sitting there with had forgotten about that line of dialogue because it's just kind of throwaway, like, "Oh yeah, and blah blah blah."
Right.
And you're like, and like if you weren't paying really close attention, you wouldn't catch it. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And the best thing about the movie, besides Daniel Craig, is Chris Evans.
I've heard he's really good in it too.
He plays the grandson who is a total sleazeball. Like, doesn't show up for the funeral, but only shows up for the will reading, and they're all there like talking crap about him because he's shown up for the will reading but didn't go there for the funeral, and he's literally like, "I don't care what you people have to say. I'm gonna be rich." And you're like, wow, I've seen Chris Evans be like a snarky jerk, but this is like he's like a sleazeball, and you're like, wow, and he does such a good job at it. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I hear he's really good, but and I knew that whatever he did after uh Endgame would be a divergence from the Boy Scout for sure. Uh,
He is far from a Boy Scout in this movie, to
yeah,
the point where he has some dialogue to people where he calls people some names that you go, did Captain America really just call somebody something?
yeah, and that I mean and that's got to be probably a challenge too for the actors that have been in roles like that for a long time. I have the same issue with Henry Cavill. I was just talking with a friend about this earlier. In that I don't find he can do angry very convincing, mostly because I think he's a pretty happy person who's overly charming, and we've all seen him as Superman, and even in his role as Superman, he was kind of like cross. And even when Superman got angry, I didn't buy it. Like I don't
Yeah.
like Pet Cemetery Superman does not sell me anything. It doesn't feel at all like it works. And
I,
I know that's not a good plot point. I know it's not my favorite part of the movie, but it's also like I just don't find that Henry Cavill can be mean looking. Like it's just the same thing with
I
Mission
gotta,
Impossible. Like
okay.
he can be stern, but he doesn't look murderous.
Yeah, no, I will say this: when I recently just watched that last Mission Impossible with him, and I didn't find him intimidating at all.
No, like I mean, physically he's got a presence, right? Like, and when he's holding a big machine gun, sure, but like any of the dialogue threats are just like you look like Magnum PI, like like it doesn't really work.
I don't know if you've seen it, but they've just released a bunch more Witcher stuff that's Geralt related,
Yep.
which is the character he plays,
Hmm.
and I can see that. I think he has potential. This might be the thing that changes me on him a little, if he can pull it off.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I like him as an actor. Like I really enjoyed him even long before he was Superman. I liked him in The Tudors. I thought he was very good in that.
Yep.
But it's these roles of being like evil or gray or angry or
Yeah.
whatever. Like they just for whatever reason it just doesn't seem. It's the same thing that I said about Emilia Clarke when she was being evil Daenerys. Like the
Yep.
combination of like, yes, okay, we have more respect for the character than this, but it's also there's something just she's a small person, she's pretty cute. Like she didn't do angry face very well,
Yeah.
and then you see an interview with her. I mean, the woman just doesn't stop smiling. Which is
Yeah.
a fantastic thing, but then you realize, oh, that's why I can't find her convincing as a small angry person.
Yep.
Like stuff
Yep.
like that I think is a little thing, a little issue. Now, I have seen Chris Evans in other things. He directed and starred in a romantic movie. And it wasn't even a romantic comedy. It was just romantic drama, and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me right now.
I think I remember when it came out, and I was like, oh yeah, nope, that's gonna be a rental.
But
Maybe.
it was a good rental. It wasn't something I would rush out to go see in theaters. But he was good in it, and he plays. He doesn't play good or bad. He just plays normal person. So he's not Boy
Yeah.
Scout Captain America, but he's not like trying to be an evil son of a bitch either. And it was really,
Yeah.
really good. And it's about this woman that is leaving her husband, and they have like a romantic connection. Evans and this other person in the film, and so he's like he obviously not like he obviously is attracted to her, but because of what she's going through, he's trying to respect that. But you can still see that he's just kind of like really attracted and maybe suggesting that she does things that that would change her life and she might not want to do and all this kind of stuff. And it's a really solid film for. I think it was a small budget kind of indie sort of thing, shot in New York, sort of stuff.
Yeah. Most of those kind of films are
Yeah,
usually small
but it
budget
was really good.
indies.
But it just showed me a different side of Captain America um, that you
I,
don't really get to see because all the stuff there's so little dialogue. There's so little. I mean, you learn a little bit more. I'd say you learn more about Steve Rogers and like the exchanges between him and say Black Widow about a peanut butter sandwich than you
yeah.
do when he's talking to the team because whenever he's in front of the team, he's the leader and it's all
Yeah.
kind of pomp and circumstance.
I will say, if you're looking for something different and you're looking to go to the theaters, Knives Out is probably going to be in theaters a while longer. It's still doing really well, from what I understand. So I quite enjoyed it. So, but murder mysteries are my thing. So
Yeah, when I imagine it'll be into the theaters well into the holidays because that's probably why they released it. It sounds like it's a good romp, like it's just a good outing, for a crew of people to go see a film.
yeah, and I will say this: it's not bloody, not super bloody. It's not really gory. I wouldn't say it's for the kids, but I wouldn't say that like it's. I think it's a PG-13 maybe. Uh, like I I could have saw this when I was a little kid and it wouldn't have phased me at all.
Right, right. It's about the mystery, not about the violence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that brings us into the Internet Minute, which is, of course, brought to you by you, dear listener. The Citadel Cafe is 100% listener supported. If you get value out of the show and you'd like to consider putting a little bit of value back in, you can become a member at patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will get you an invite to the member-only Discord server, and there are multiple levels with different rewards like Discord roles, bonus episodes, that sort of stuff. And we are currently at 16 patrons. That is one up from November, but we'd like to be one up for January. So rolling into 2020, if you want to be patron number 16, you can head to patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe. My pick this week is a story that I actually meant to run with last week, so it's a little bit dated here locally. But Stephen and I were having such a good time talking about the Dragon Prince, I decided to just kind of push it to this week. But a parking lot at a new Sobeys, which is a grocery store chain here in Canada, in Timberley, here in Nova Scotia, is largely made from recycled plastics. The Sobeys had contacted a local Colchester County company. I believe it was called Goodwood Plastic Products, to create a new asphalt pavement mixture. So, as you can imagine, parking lots for grocery stores are pretty large. And a lot of times with Sobeys, they're a pretty big company. So they'll have like, the Sobeys, and then there'll also be like a gas station in the parking lot, maybe a restaurant. So like there's a pretty big parking lot by the time it's all said and done. And Sobeys are not small stores either. They're not Walmart size, but they're big grocery chains. The amount of recycled plastics used in the parking lot is equal to, this article says 6 million plastic bags. I thought it was 60,000 with an article that I read earlier in the week. So I don't quote me on the number. Bottom line, a lot of plastic
Yeah.
bags, and plastic bags are a big thing right now, even though industry and large, companies contribute most of the pollution on the planet. There is the visuals of plastic bags and marine life and all this kind of stuff kind of is what gets the press. And less plastic is better. It's not like reducing plastic is a bad thing.
Right.
Right. And if that's the case, like I just thought to myself, 6 million plastic bags in one parking lot, that would nearly solve the problem if all of the parking lots started to do this.
Yep.
Doing a little bit of digging, I don't imagine that this is cheap, because I would imagine the process to actually have it work is a little bit more involved. Otherwise, it would be readily used.
Give it 5 years.
Well, and this is the thing, and one of the reasons, and actually this happens in avionics as well, in airplane testing. Nova Scotia is one of the harshest environments around because of the high salt content in the air. We are like 80% surrounded by ocean. So not only are we halfway to the North Pole, but it's also really salty all the time, which it plays havoc on pavement. Like every single spring, the whole place, it looks like Swiss cheese because there's been so much destruction. So if this is the case with all that pavement having to go down every spring, then if the parking lot can hold up to a Nova Scotia winter, Nova Scotia plows, all that kind of stuff, then we'll know more in the next little while as to whether it has to be adjusted, whether or not it's cost effective. Like, do they have to patch it all the time? Does it hold up like asphalt? All that kind of stuff. Either way, still thought it was a pretty cool idea.
That is a very cool idea.
Yeah, there's a little anecdote too. There are also a number of picnic tables out front of the store that are made from plastic lumber. So again, plastic, similar to like how press board would be made, the plastic bags and stuff are just ground and chopped and sliced down into this fine kind of like granular thing and then pressed and glued together into what looks like wood, but it's plastic. So it looks like a regular picnic table, same shape. It's just plastic instead. And they might be bright colors, that kind of thing. But so less, I think, less ingenuitive than, that's not even a real word, less imaginative and I guess industrial than say making plastic into asphalt, which I can imagine if that is a way to somehow strengthen asphalt, like if it ends up being stronger than normal asphalt, that could be really cool.
Yeah.
Well, that is the end of this episode of the Citadel Cafe. You can find more about the show at thecitadelcafe.com, where Kevin MacLeod has composed the music. The email for the show is thecitadelcafe@gmail.com. You can find us by name on Twitter and Facebook, although Facebook is not playing nice with me lately. So if you don't see much from the Citadel Cafe on Facebook, then blame Facebook, not me, because I'm trying, but boy, do they make it hard. You can find the podcast on your favorite podcast app, including iTunes, Android, Stitcher, and Spotify. Look for us maybe on YouTube in 2020. I'm trying to get that organized. Word of mouth is, of course, the easiest way to support the show. It's 100% free. Just poke a friend in the arm and say, hey, this is a really good show. You should listen to it. And then hopefully they will. And then we'll add more ear holes to the podcast, which is always the goal. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I am doing online at joelduggan.com. That includes my illustration and design portfolio. So if you're looking to get some art done in the new year, then please reach out and let me know. You can listen to the Spawn Chunks at thespawnchunks.com, where I talk about Minecraft. We have a brand new version of Minecraft that came out yesterday. And so we'll be talking about that this coming Monday, which will be the last show of the Spawn Chunks for 2019. And next week on the Citadel Cafe will also be the last week for the Citadel Cafe in 2019. I'm going to take a couple weeks off over the holidays, enjoy some time with family, and we'll be back in the new year. Lou, where can people find you and all the cool stuff that you're doing online?
Easiest place to find me is under the name Busy Zombie Lord, wherever your social media finds you. And you can also find my podcast at Zombies Ate My Podcast. We're on everything. With this week, we're going to talk about the first half of the season of Walking Dead. We've stopped talking about it week to week. It's getting monotonous, so we're gonna just do it mid-season and then mid-season to finale.
Nice. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.